We're both on councils. So
Okay, good,
yeah.
so you get it.
Yeah.
Well, good evening. Welcome to the Thursday, March 22 meeting of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. And to get us started, I want to ask Mr. Glavy if you'd be so kind to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a action-packed agenda tonight, and we're going to start it off with a presentation by the team that is seeking to turn an opportunity of a very historic place for Littleton into basically hopefully one of the several anchors for a revitalized common. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. Would you like me to take the lead on this?
Sure.
But please state your name and
Sorry.
before you start.
That too.
My name is Gabrielle Eidenwild.
And I'm Rachel Robinson.
Together we founded the Baker House 1673 Preservation Trust, a newly founded nonprofit for the purpose of restoring this property into something that, as you mentioned, could anchor the common and bring a whole bunch of programming and community space to Littleton. So our mission is very simple. We want to support immersive historical educational experiences, create makerspace for local artists, and elevate Littleton's cultural and historical profile in the region.
So our vision for the space is to have, to obviously preserve the space. That's our first and foremost goal of preserving the house. But we'd like to have a multi-use, multi-space historical cultural landmark for Littleton, and have it be an educational resource for school children. Obviously, early colonial America, which this time period is part of the curriculum. So we envision school groups coming in, teachers having workshop days there, learning more about bolstering the curriculum that all school children will have to learn, as well as having a community art space. There is a community art center in Maynard that rents out artistic space for people to come and create. They actually have a wait list, so this would alleviate some of that backlog and be somewhere that people could come and rent a studio for a month and have time to work on their art. There is also a forge in the back, and so there's interesting things that we could do with that. Again, using blacksmiths, ceramics, glass blowing. There's a lot to envision what we would do with that space in particular. And then have an event space in the back. There's ample grounds in the back for weddings, functions, cocktail parties, town events, and the like. So this would really be a communal space for everyone to use.
So the way that we feel that the Baker House, and we'll go into our vision in more detail should the committee need or want that. We figured that there are contributions to the master plan that this can offer. For one, it is an unparalleled historic asset. It was built in 1673, as noted by a wonderful beam, and there's an oak beam in the attic that says built in 1673 by SP. So we're tracking down who SP is, but in the meantime, there's 350 years of use and almost continual residency. And there has been a lot of architectural changes throughout the property. Like the addition of the barn is 1880. The forge is the early 19th century, or excuse me, early 20th century. However, the main house has a lot of really good historical details still present, still there. And so there's just a lot of richness in the architecture itself and in the grounds itself. The property also predates the age of the town by almost 40 years as well. So it's one of the earliest houses we know of in the inventory at all. as you had mentioned, the location in the common will help anchor it, as well as contributing to the cultural and historical district designations later on. The common is already part of excuse me, I want to make sure I don't get it wrong. The Freedom's Way National Heritage Area. Littleton is already a part of that. Littleton Common is already a part of that, so we can bring the Baker House immediately into a not tourist map, but like there's already a supported little trail there. So we're not reinventing the wheel in a lot of ways. There's a lot of interest already here for the kind of historical properties that we're talking about. The use of the CPA funds for redevelopment and reuse of historic properties is a direct key theme from the master plan, if I remember correctly. And the purchase of threatened property is a direct recommendation of the plan as well. And this property is threatened as is. Currently, it was on the market for about 2 years, and there was talk about some development turning it into a two-family. That has fallen through. The developer may or may not be coming back. It's hard to tell. And if he doesn't get it, then there's rumors that Northern Bank would like to purchase the property and use it for a parking lot for their large space, is what we understand. So this feels like it's threatened. So that's why we're moving very quickly to try and get this going and get this refurbished. We know we're short on time. Would the committee like to hear more details of what we have in mind for the house, the barn, the forge, more details of our plan? We have them prepared.
Well, I'll just offer, I think as a selectman, we're going to be entertaining the same, we already have been through emails anyways, the same
Thank you. Yes.
Consideration. So I'm not sure how much I should interject in terms of my opinion here, other than to state the obvious. I'm personally fully supportive of protecting the property, and I'm glad that there's been a groundswell from just folks to get creative and do that. On a personal note, I remember Bert and Ethel Furbeck, who lived there for many years. They were good friends of my parents. So I've been in that house a number of times, know it well. And both the history of it and its location make it optimal for that sort of use. That being said, I think when we consider it at the selectman level, we're going to look at the various options available. I think before we knew the extent to which you had put together a game plan, we talked about, I'd actually offered the idea that the town could just purchase it, put a demolition restriction on it, historic preservation restriction on it, and then sell it. Now, I don't know whether what you're talking about envisions that there would be this 501c3 that would own and operate it, or
Simply operate.
Okay, so the town would outlay the money, but we would not get any recompense back on that. So it's not going to be it's use the town's money, and then the private outfit would run it.
Yes. However, we are not we are not opposed to some kind of long-term profit sharing with the town as well.
Well, have you even looked at the option of a model where you have an outside entity? I mean, much like we have a conservation trust, it's independent of the town, a historic trust, which could also be the owner of the property.
Well,
Yes.
that's what we're
That's
trying to
kind of
be.
Okay, but if you were buying with town funds, the town would have to be,
Well, the town will own it, but we
well,
would.
that's not
yeah.
the same thing. I'm talking
Right.
about you folks owning it through a trust. where
Oh,
you,
yes, we are in consultation with an attorney to try and figure out like all the different, we're trying not to reinvent the wheel too much. We like the Historical Society, Historical Commission oversight and like that arrangement, but we're still not sure what the most beneficial model is going to be, but we
Okay.
know that there isn't a,
Well, I would just say that be open to that
Absolutely.
and be willing to discuss and explore that, because if the town's going to own it, I think we have the means of protecting it. That part, fortunately, we're in a great position to do. As far as operating it, sounds like you folks have given a lot of thought to that, but if the town's simply gonna own it and your organization, the Baker House Trust, is going to operate it, why not own it?
True. I can see the question, and we're not opposed to
And that would
that.
allow us to replenish funds that we could go on and save the
Save
next
another property.
Right.
Exactly.
And there is the possibility that the town, I mean, we have worked that out, that the town will, even after owning
I mean,
it,
you
can
you
sell
can
it.
even put
They could sell it to us.
well, you could put a place that served, did functions, served occasional meals, whatever, and make, have a revenue stream there.
Right.
We do actually, and that's
yeah.
one of
Yeah.
the things we've talked about as we've been working this model. We've literally been working on this plan for a month now, so it's
Right.
it's had a lot of iterations, and unfortunately, I cannot remember the iteration that the committee has had the pleasure of reviewing. So,
I think it was the first one.
oh, so it may not have had them well.
Let me ask you this.
Please.
There's two questions just of historic, and that is, although all of you here have used the term historic in relation to this house, okay, and to this place, what in particular, what is particularly historic, other than its age, and what does it represent in terms of pre-colonial or colonial? Because Littleton is different than Concord, I think.
Exactly.
And I'm trying to get at the difference.
So Littleton, during King Philip's War, was the sixth praying Indian town of Massachusetts, which is a very complicated history that the town has. Obviously, it was the Neshoba plantation at that time. There is a historical record in 1674 that there were 10 families in the town and around 50 people that were living here. So Littleton has this complicated history of being a conversion town for the Native Americans, converting them to Christianity. So this is a house that would have been there at this time. Again, it's a very sensitive topic, because obviously it's a sensitive issue. Destroying the house or getting rid of it would be in many ways whitewashing the history of the town. This is also what we can date back to the second oldest building in the town. There's one other building that I think was documented as the oldest, right? That was on the
House.
national, sorry?
The house up on
Yeah,
Newtown.
Yeah.
yeah, yes, exactly. So,
May I?
yes, absolutely.
So the interesting thing about this is that it had one of the earliest residents. So I'm still trying to track down the 1673, the builder and the owner immediately after it was built. But in I believe 1718, the Baker family moved in, which is why we call it the Baker House, and they owned it for several generations. But the Baker, Joseph Baker, I believe, Joseph Baker the first or the second, they were like. Their family tree is very convoluted. multiple Johns, multiple Josephs. Anyway, the Baker patriarch was Littleton's first town clerk. And so he saved all of the town records, and he did the clerk duties. There is also potential that the wounded within King Philip's War were also taken care of at this house, because SP, I believe, there's a potential that it's Spencer Proctor, who was the medic.
Surgeon. Yeah, the surgeon, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And there's a potential there. I'm still trying to track that down. So part of it is because this is 100 years pre-revolutionary, and there's a lot of houses on the coast that are much more that are this era. Out here west of Boston, there's not a lot that is pre-revolutionary, and so that 100 years of history, that's a full 5 generations of history that are really important to preserve and save, and we can tell that story through the house.
And it's also good to know, I mean, Massachusetts history is not Plymouth, Salem, Concord. That's not, I mean, there's a lot of time gaps between that, and this is an important part of the historical record as well. You know, it's not as flashy as the Revolutionary War, but King Philip's War is still a very important part of American history. Also, Amelia Earhart was at the house at one point. She was caught speeding through the Common and in the 1930s, and the gentleman who owned the home was the police officer at the time. He was the only police officer in town. He pulled her over for speeding and recognized her and was very impressed, knew who she was, and invited her back to the house to meet his wife. So, I mean, we don't have it documented that she had tea there, but can only imagine that a cup of tea was offered. So there have been very interesting nuggets of history that have happened in this house. So we can track the history. Yes, Jonathan?
Well, I think you have to say that for the town of Littleton, this is one of the foundation houses that makes, that brought the town into existence. And for that, it's of great importance. We have, as both of you have said, we have very few properties, very few evidences of anything that old, and this really marks something for Littleton, a very important part of its history, and so it certainly deserves to be preserved, aside from the fact that we can say that many houses that individually aren't that significant or unique contribute to the historic scope, the historic landscape, the historic ambiance that makes Littleton what it is, and we perhaps can't preserve all of them, but some of them many of them are certainly worth preserving, and this one I think more than many others.
My other question, do you have any sense that your plan in terms of ownership is going to be influenced in your own minds or in your own plan by the presence of a sewage system?
It would certainly enhance our plans, absolutely. It would mean that we would have more opportunity for revenue with having larger functions. There's the breezeway. I think it's not in the first plan that I had sent you guys, but we would like to create a small cafe. We have it be a gift shop regardless, but also have a small cafe in there.
Coffee only, no food preparation anyway.
Right. So not like catering kitchens or anything like that, but it would mean that we could have larger events. But exactly.
And horses only, exactly.
That would be great. But it would mean that we could have larger bathrooms for more capacity and more people for functions. So it would greatly increase our potential.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
So two things. First, thank you for taking this on, because it's not an easy task to start this from scratch. In your reference to the master plan on page 114, as you've probably already seen, there are heritage landscape inventory items, and one of them being the long store. So the fact that you are looking at bringing in the long store and Littleton Common areas in here as well. So this, I think, very much fits in with what we want to be able to do in terms of the historic aspect of the master plan. So thank you for including that as well in all of this. So I'm just curious what your backgrounds are to be able to do something like this, because it does include a lot of variables from essentially creating a new organization to financing, et cetera.
I like to say I'm a Jill of all trades. I've had multiple careers and multiple formal trainings, but my first formal training was in theatrical design and technical theater, and then I also have formal training in public administration and mental health. And I'm an artist myself. I've started my own business. So I understand enough to know when I need help. So I am not beyond, I am not too proud to outsource when I need expertise. So, and we are currently in the process of some of those sources. Like, we know we need a structural engineer. We know we need we need a building inspector to point out any particular problem areas, because a lot of the building is original, down to some of the fieldstone cellar is, and the fieldstone lined well. Those are original, and we'd like to make sure that we're not asking the town to buy something that's going to fall over next year. That's really important to us. So, and I'm passionately curious about pretty much everything in the world, so I learn constantly. So I don't feel like, I know I don't have what many people think of as a formal background, but I know enough and am comfortable enough in starting this organization and working in the community art space very specifically.
Both my undergraduate and my master's degree are in archaeology. My master's focus in aerial photography and geophysical survey. I have worked in museums since basically I was a teenager, starting interning at a small Native American museum for about 2 years in high school. And so I have a lot of contacts with that. And I was very involved with with not just like going on digs and cleaning artifacts and such, but my mother was also on the board, so I had a lot of experience with helping out with the galas and her being involved because I was involved. I have also interned at the MFA, and currently I am an associate curator at the MIT Museum, and my focus is more in the photography aspect of archaeology, but I obviously have a lot of museum experience and a lot of museum connections to that world. So that's kind of where I run in all of that part of it. And the artist, so we're museum and artist, and that's why we've collaborated to make these two entities.
Well, I have no doubt that once it gets operational, that it will be fabulous. So the reason for bringing that up is just to suggest that for those areas, like the numbers and piece of it, et cetera, anything at all, to seek out community resources.
Absolutely.
Because I know that a lot of other people will probably want to see the same dream realized that you do, and so seeking out those folks would be good.
Absolutely, and that's where we are very much trying to do that. So we are trying to get the board of directors and the board of advisors together, and we're trying to do large grabs of people in the community, anybody who knows anything. We're trying to get as much expertise on either of those boards as possible. So yes, as Gabrielle said, we are not above reaching out to all of our people connections and pick their brains about everything. So we are very much actively doing that.
Well, to the extent that you would bring people into the common with what you've got, I think the Littleton Business Association would love to hear from you. Because
And
That's a brilliant idea. Thank you.
So we're actively trying to get in front of as many boards as possible. So we've presented to the Historical Committee, the LCC, and obviously CPC. So
We're scheduled to talk with the Historical Society
on the 3rd.
So the next LBA meeting, we can reach out to them and ask if they would like to see what's happening.
So if anybody's on board of Park and Rec, we would also like to meet. So we're trying, we're honestly, we're actively trying to get in front of as many people. I mean, just also because this needs to go to town meeting, so we need town support. And we do want to have as much feedback, because we do see this as being very much a community entity and seeing something good for the town as residents, and we want all residents to be comfortable and happy with it. So
Which is actually one of the reasons why we'd like to, as much as we're coming in front of, we would like to request your support and expertise in trying to figure out the parking aspects of these as this is going. I mean, because we have been told many times, many times by a few people. Specifically, we met with the neighbors of of Robinson Road. And we had, overall, it was a very helpful very supportive, largely supportive meeting. However, they brought up many, many questions about parking, about traffic. You know, they're wanting to make sure that that is a thing that doesn't affect them too much. I can understand their concerns. What we would like to do is we want to make sure that we are working with the implementation committee to make sure that beyond just the zoning, beyond just the the permitting, that we can hook into whatever revitalization in terms of literally just traffic patterns you guys are coming up with.
Help us advocate, because we very much, in addition to priority number one, which is the sewering piece, there's also all the other ancillary infrastructure pieces. Parking has come up numerous times.
Yes.
And we're, our later agenda topics are about hiring the consultant that's gonna help us envision the common areas, so you should definitely, include yourselves in that dialogue as it
Wonderful.
goes forward.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, if I can touch on a couple other areas, I think the case on preserving the building's been done, that's an easy one. I think the means of protecting it through town funds is also relatively easy to ascertain. The other parts about, ownership and operation, I think one, you ought to consider different alternatives or not be surprised when others put that on the table.
Absolutely.
And to wit, I don't know if anybody's mentioned to you or not, but if indeed the town took ownership of it and wanted to convey it to you folks for operation, that would probably have to be part of a public bid process.
Yes, and we would actually prefer that.
Okay.
I would really appreciate that if it was a public bid process, because then honestly, the best idea wins, and
Right.
that's democracy.
Okay.
So,
Didn't want you to wake up some morning and say, oh, we didn't know about that.
no, we were actually prepared for, and are preparing for the potential and the need for a request for proposal response. So we're 100% on
I'd be
board with.
surprised if you had opposition, but you never know.
I don't know, there is, there's at least and I put a potential.
Kimball's, which everybody always says is in Littleton, might finally want to come to Littleton,
They can an itty bitty golf course.
How does it work with the Historical Society? They're, to my mind, the closest thing to this, where the town,
well, they're like-
the town owns the building, but they rent it. Did they go through?
That is a very, but that's your model, right. Yeah,
Did
and
they
the only
go through
difference
a
here is
big-
they're looking to do kind of a retail venture that's got some,
Yeah.
or, whatever.
A
operation.
self-sustaining nonprofit.
Right,
But
right.
we
But
would
that's the
really,
same type of model, yeah, the town owns the building and the,
Did they go, was there a bid process for that?
I think there was, yeah.
Because you were back along in the front.
Yeah, I go back far enough
You
that
were
I don't
probably-
remember, but I'm pretty,
Probably on the selectmen when
yeah,
that far back.
I know I was, yeah, but I'm pretty certain there was a public bid process that nobody else bid on it, yes.
we'd also really like to, part of the development of this property is we would like to open it up to the town, for to have it available on the community calendar for meetings and events and things like that for the town, very specifically. So we offer that space, because I know
Great.
community and meeting space is at a premium right now. So especially before, with the library being a nebulous thing, this can be another space available to the town. So we really want to make it a community space, even though it's going to be a private nonprofit. The space and the programming is all community oriented. We're not going to have, there's going to be no vanity, there will be no vanity exhibits in the gallery. There will be no, there will be events like weddings and things, but it'd be open to all, so.
Well, I plan on tracking what you're doing as our consultant joins us, because one of the major things we are working on is basically visualizing in concrete terms what the common could look like, and determining which of the various forms it could take are the most appealing and benefit the town the most. So you're standing right at the intersection
Great.
of where it happens.
Very
So
literally.
you're not going to fall off the radar unless you volunteer to.
It's good.
Yeah,
Good to know.
we would love to maintain contact and be in the loop with that, because we
Yeah,
have some
I
ideas.
think Mr. Glavy's advice about being open to the various forms of,
Yes.
shall we say, configuration, especially coming from the Board of Selectmen, should be followed. I think you're going to
Yeah.
get some good.
Yeah, if you haven't already started, you know, other towns have different models of this, you know,
Yep.
poke around and see what works. Acton,
Yep,
you know.
Westford.
Andover, Concord, even Haverhill, I know, has a tavern up there that they,
Yeah.
there's a lot of them. And, you know, they might all have different models, and you can figure out what works best.
yeah, our spreadsheet's growing
Okay, good.
Yeah.
by the day. So,
Well,
thank you very much for your time.
thank you for coming in. I really appreciate it. Hope to see you again under slightly different, different configuration.
Were you looking for like a vote of support in your general pursuit of this, or?
Well, I don't want to usurp your ability to vote freely in other capacities.
Well, it would just be an advisory anyways, and like we support their efforts to preserve the property, you know, and, you know.
I mean, any vote that you are legally allowed to give us, letter, vote.
We have zero
however-
power, so we can legally do a lot of things,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
The thing is that you're captured, if you start, you appear, what you're trying to do appears multiple times in the master plan. So, for us to say, no, we can't support you, is sort of, that's not where we're at. I mean, it's there already.
Right,
So
sure.
I think the vote, the thing we can vote on is saying that you're very clearly, very, very consistent with. We all agree that we can adopt the notion that you were very consistent with the master plan and have no difficulty recommending you in the same spirit.
Thank you. That would be,
And is there any objection to that kind of?
No, very, very well stated.
Supporting them at town meeting might be a better way to put it.
And that's where we're gonna really be looking
Yeah, well,
for.
this is, the master plan is supported was supported at the town meeting. You're in there, so you already, as it were, have some, shall we say, coverage. But here is basically, we're explicitly saying, you're in the master plan, and therefore, we support you going forward.
Preserving that building, or, so maybe we
Preserving
should
is an integral
talk
part
about
of
it
the
that way. I
plan.
mean, removing you
Yeah.
folks as an entity
Sure.
out of
Yeah,
it and say,
yeah.
well,
And by the way, one of the 7 initial tasks for this committee was the report from the Historic Commission. All right? You have usurped them, okay?
that's him right down there.
That's it here,
Me
okay?
too, I'm on the
Oh, yeah,
committee.
that's right.
All right? What you have here is a jewel. And that's one of the reasons I'm very glad that you're here, and have no difficulty in making a motion, here in a
All right,
second.
well, you want a motion?
I-
And I'll open to any amendments, but I'd say, I'd make the motion that the Master Plan Implementation Committee, consistent with its adopted priorities, supports the effort to preserve the Baker House on Robinson Road through town means.
Motion's on the floor.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
There you go.
thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, consideration,
$2 will
support.
get you a cup of coffee.
Yeah,
That's a feel-good moment.
any little bit has helped.
Yeah, no,
Any
it's been
little
Well,
good.
keep it working. You got a lot of stuff to do, and any
Yes.
way I can help, as you know, Rachel, already, I've done what I can, and anything I can do more, I'm
Honestly, going to our website and signing up to be on our contact list would really be very helpful for anybody that would like to do that.
website is.
And I have their business cards that we've made up, they have the website on there, so I'm just gonna pass these around there.
Thank you.
You might want to tell us what it is, so the 6 people that are watching this tonight will
Oh,
get it on TV.
BakerHouse1673.org.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you,
that's all.
Rachel.
Or if you have one too, I think. So, and again, for town purposes, for community purposes, we want everyone to like it and be involved.
of course, I took them out because.
So anyways, thank you very much for hearing us out and appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good
Everyone
luck.
else, not me. I'm so sorry. Thank you so much.
Oh, my good luck.
Thank you. You can stay if you'd like. Okay.
We'll go home and watch.
We look close.
There'll be 8 people
Go home and
watching.
do the grant.
I would say, sure you will.
Okay, so the next item is going to be the selecting a consultant for the Littleton Common revitalization and associated zoning work. And I think all of you now have copies of the reference checks that were carried out.
I read it several times on my computer, but I didn't print it out because I knew they'd be here, so if you will excuse me. Big flop on TV.
I did similarly. Oh, they are here?
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. All right. Thank you, John.
Reimbursement sheet. When we get to board business, we have a couple bills to approve as well.
No.
Yeah, I'll need everybody's signature on the cover sheet. So, Mike, there's a cover sheet on the front of that. No,
Keep
no,
going,
yeah.
keep going.
There you go, that's the one. I need everybody's.
It's getting expensive.
Most bills I run through the planning board, but some of the funds are.
Yeah, yes.
It's like, this meeting was next, so I said,
Just the
Ask
top,
you
that's
for-
all we need, right?
yes, just.
Yeah, that's what I thought. Everyone has to say, or everyone who's here. All right. So Gary's going to join us for, he asked for a delay of the vote until he gets here, but there's no reason we can't start discussing the
Mike
final
won't,
piece.
Mike won't be here?
No, he will not. Fontanello absent himself, to be completely.
I'm sorry, not you, Mike.
No, that's all right. I know who he is.
He's absent.
Yeah, his absence is noted. So, as far as the reference checks go, I want to first of all thank Anna for sharing with me the time spent on the phone and elsewhere. We also managed to take a brief road trip to look at some of the towns that have been mentioned to see physical evidence, and I think we probably all did some stuff on our own to see what was going on. I made a couple of visits to Lexington. I had double duty, but I took a look and asked a few questions. So I think the best way to do it is to basically try to have a discussion in which not only do we discuss the reference checks, which are the last or the final piece of the kind of information that we would like to have. I'd like to just also come to some understanding of the criteria that we're going to be using for the selection of the candidate to make sure that our discussion of the references are consistent with it. And the criteria that we use has to do with being advantageous or not advantageous and how it gets ranked. And so I think the best place to start with this, Mark, if I want to pick on you to start.
Okay.
And to review the ranking, you should repeat the ranking that you gave before, whatever. Okay, what I'm trying to what I'd like to do first is find out where people are having absorbed the information from the reference checks, where you are now as a result.
They both came back excellent. Everybody they've worked with had nothing but good things to say about both groups as my read through this. I think the only difference still is which one you're more comfortable with. I think Fort Point was a little smaller, a little more user-friendly than Harriman. I think that's really the only difference. And the people, I had a better feeling for the people at Fort Point than I did at Harriman, but
Okay.
it was,
I don't know if it's a case where, you know, you read it looking to find what you want to find.
Really?
But I did find, and I appreciate the, you know, obvious extensive effort that
Yeah.
you folks put into doing the background checks. I do feel confident that it, to my mind, reinforced both what came through in the applications and in the face-to-face interviews we had with them. I'm happy to see confirmed the Harriman/Cecil group as solid as they appear to be by all outside things, and it's, you know, I take full note that people were very enthusiastic about members of the Fort Point team, but I noticed, just as I did in the interviews, that it's the subcontractor, UTL, that gets the biggest raves for the projects they've worked on. Not so much, you know, not that there was anything negative on Fort Point, but it was the parts that jumped out even from the reference checks were enthusiasm toward their outfit, and that kind of leaves me where I was. I like their piece of it, but they're not in charge of that group, and that's troubling to me.
Okay, all right.
No, that was the one thing. The leadership of Fort Point left a little bit desired from the interview and the whole thing. The people that are there were phenomenal. I agree. The leadership, the person that's going to run it wasn't the best. Let's put it that way, I guess.
You mean the person from,
The woman who was.
Project manager.
Yeah, project manager,
Project
and for
manager.
my part, I think that extends to, you know, Fort Point in their record. I mean, I don't see a lot of independent, strong reference points that they earned on their own when they aren't in conjunction with UTL.
okay, all right. Mr. Leibowitz.
Well, I would say, when I first read the written proposals, I was very strongly in favor of the Harriman Group. I have been somewhat swayed to now maybe favoring the Fort Point Group from both their presentation and also from the responses to the references. And I think even, I mean, the one where Fort Point is referenced very strongly. You see here, you know, this first one, it doesn't say exactly where this was, I was.
That was at Fort Point.
Oh.
It's a little, it's a
Dorchester,
strip.
part of Dorchester.
It's a strip technically sort of straddle, it's on the water, close to the water, just behind the water.
JFK Library.
Yeah, okay, yeah, I understand. I mean, you know, I think that, I mean, that what they say about team prep, town reps, very specific information, consultants exceeded expectations, which were high, you know, even in the face of some resident resistance to change. I mean, I really thought that the references were so strong on the Fort Point group, I mean, all three of them, that I'm kind of favoring them now, where they had been second in my mind before. I mean, again, it's still close, and I would not be unhappy with Harriman, but the strength of the enthusiasm, really, for the Fort Point group. The one thing with Harriman, I mean, is in one case where they were brought in, people felt they'd done a good job, but then what they were doing didn't happen. I mean, they were trying to do something. I mean, now, probably it wasn't their fault and so on, but, you know, I mean, the things that where Fort Point and UTL and the rest of them, Donahue came in, one or the other.
Retirement.
I mean, the things that people said about them, I mean, I am just very, very impressed with that, and so I'm kind of favoring them now where I wasn't necessarily before.
Okay. We'll give Gary a chance to settle in after the parent-teachers meeting.
Yep, a side effect of the snow day.
Yeah, so I'm very glad there was no snow day.
We all have to sign this too while you have a chance, so we're,
I didn't get to sign it.
yeah, don't worry, I'll get, we're still here, so this is a bill. I mean, something we have to pay.
What is this? You have to sign a bill?
Makes us feel important.
Yeah. There you go. Okay, thanks. So, Anna,
Yep.
where were you, just so we review, where were we now, where were you at the beginning and where are you now?
Well, I think from the beginning, there are pretty close pros and cons for each of them, which I can go through if you'd like. But one of the things that I think stands out for me is some of the people aspects. One of the references for Harriman said very specifically, you know, bottom line is, anytime you're working with a consultant, it really comes down to the relationship that you have with a consultant and what it is that that you're working on together, and so that's what it comes down to. So as between the project managers, as between the leads of the organizations. So I think that that's a huge consideration for us because it is going to be a year's worth of work. And then the other piece of it is in terms of how folks in town will receive the consultants. So again, it's a people issue. So the two different consultants have strengths in terms of working with the public and working with staff and town administrators and elected officials. So I just want to throw that out there. So it is pretty challenging to make sure that we're evaluating all aspects of it. One of the key factors that stands out for me, as Jonathan pointed out, is enthusiasm. Wanting to make sure that we really are able to make Littleton shine, as it will, in terms of what's being done in the common. And from that perspective, I think the Fort Point team stands out from that perspective.
Hate to do this to you, Gary, but we're up. And the question is that we all sort of voice an opinion after having read the proposals and had the interview. Now we have the reference checks, and I was catching up to see what your view was now and what's behind it, and that's it.
I'm sorry if people already talked about this, but I had some questions on the reference checks because I was able to follow the references on Fort Point because there was references to projects, and I could see the questions answered to specific projects. So I understand, in Weston versus Salem, how that went and things like that.
Yeah.
Which is helpful to me because I think Weston's an applicable project.
Mhm.
I didn't get that from the Harriman FXM Associates references, so the answers were blended for question 2, but probably multiple references. So which projects were being referred to with
So, for
Harriman's?
example, under question 2 for Harriman,
Yeah,
the first bullet point around Village Center is Amherst.
okay.
I thought you might ask these questions, Gary. The next one is Columbia Square, Weymouth. And the third one is Tiverton, Rhode Island.
Okay. So you did those references, I
I
assume?
did.
So, when you were talking to the references, was it kind of like a flat response? Was it enthusiastic responses, you know what I mean? Like when you kind of get an impression from, like, yeah, they were good, well, yeah, they were really good. I mean,
It It was
the
the first.
differences. What were
It
the
was
first?
first.
More, a little more flat.
Yes,
Competent, professional, capable,
yes.
not particularly excited about them. If I put words in your mouth, I'm just trying to get,
Yes.
okay. All right. And then you were talking with, you did the other ones, right, Michael?
Yes.
Okay. And then they seemed a little more enthusiastic in terms of their responses in working with these
Yeah, and,
folks.
and full confession that there was one in particular who got so enthusiastic, I asked the question flat out, were you briefed by whoever? No, absolutely not. So, and some more follow-ups revealed that the enthusiasm is grounded, and depending on the questions you ask, I'll be happy to fill in.
Okay. Which project was the first project for Fort Point? Yeah, there was,
That was, the very first one I think is mentioned is actually one of several that the referee knew about, and she decided to give me all that she had on this one because this was tough. This was but, you know, all I can say is that one distinctive thing that I noticed is that the group that Fort Point put together were most experienced in implementation. That is, actually getting something done, whether it's in Weston or Fort Point near, which is basically, it's been located Dorchester, that part, there's a small little enclave in there that they were called in to solve a bunch of problems. So
oh, that was,
stuff
I
done.
thought Fort Point was the name of the
Yeah.
firm.
No, that's the name of the location.
No, okay, so the first project was Fort Point in Dorchester?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's actually the name of a little area, a little town almost, and they took, that's, by the way, where they took the name, I found out from the
Okay.
firm.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. Okay. To me, I was favoring the Cecil Harriman group. I thought they presented better. I thought their proposal was much better written. I thought they had real strengths with, on the economics and urban design and planning. I think that was them. No, it's the wrong one. Harriman. That's how Harriman, I thought they were stronger, I thought they had a better proposal, it was clearer. I thought they presented very capably. I thought they were strong in economics, transportation, urban planning. I thought the urban design was okay, and the zoning and engineering was okay. I didn't really think they had any weaknesses that I could see from their proposal and from their presentation. And with the Cecil group, not the Cecil group, Fort Point, sorry. I really got the same vibe you guys did from Mr. Love with the urban design and the planning, and they seemed pretty strong in economics as well. And I didn't think they were strong in the zoning and the transportation and the engineering. And they were, I had some, we didn't get into with that, we didn't get into with their proposal, but they had a number of like options they talked about, or if you want this, we can give you this, but it costs more, or I was very unclear as to how they were structuring their proposal. So, so I was confused about that, and so, so there's, I think they're both capable. The point of the references to me was to make sure that, you know, see how they worked out. Wanted to make sure there wasn't any skeletons in the closet with regards to the firms, you know, like they briefed well, but in reality there were issues. So I still think Harriman's got the edge for me, because I think they started with the edge, they had everything else. I'm not gonna discard everything else because of the most recent information, which sometimes happens. The newest thing kind of makes you change your focus. So, but we have to decide what's most important. And overall package, I think the Harriman Group has got the best overall package, but I think if we think that with Fort Point, that I'll call it the urban design and the work with the stakeholders and things like that, which seem to come out of your reference checks, is the most important thing, then I could tilt that towards them. I think economics is probably comparable. So, and I did, one differentiate I saw in the references apparently is that, and maybe just a matter of the scope of work, but Harriman didn't seem to have that, didn't have that interaction engagement directly with the abutters and and the privates
That's
people.
correct.
And that could have been, they weren't asked to do that.
Correct.
So it could be that we don't know if they can or can't do that, they just weren't, that wasn't part of the scope of work.
That is correct.
But that was a strength apparently with Fort Point, that they had done that and they were been successful in crafting a vision and then getting people to sign up with it. So I don't think we can go wrong with either one, but I still think overall, I thought Harriman was as a group, I thought they had the full package.
I'm coming at this obviously from a slightly nuanced point, because it'll be up to the chair to interact to make sure that we get what we're after. It'll be the main point of interface. I'm sure all of you are looking for that. So I really focused more on what the thrust of our RFP was going to be about, and thinking about all the interactions, all the things that can go wrong, as well as the things that can go right. And what I discovered and learned during the process of collecting the reference checks, or listening to the references, that I heard a lot of voices of people who've been through, in particular, I want to pick on Weston, not because, you know, they're an exemplary group, it's just that they're more like us than, shall we say, and also much more closer in time. In other words, they're finished. They're far enough along that what they report is fresh in their minds. And that is that the group led by Fort Point, and in particular the contributions made by UTIL, were central to the success of the, shall we say, the recovery and redesign and basically what's going on now, which is the whole getting back to the Weston Center. And it was a hard sell. What I mean by that is there was a lot of resistance, a lot of, shall we say, I don't know, in the town. Although I managed to talk to two sources from Weston, more than two actually. One was part of the professional staff, planners, a planner in particular who gave very, very high marks, which I reported. The second one was, in fact, an architect, a resident of Weston, who admitted to me that it was very hard for him to work with another professional, especially it was his town, and he was open about how he felt, a sense of ownership.
An architect, I'm shocked they were still that.
So I knew you'd be. In fact, I wish you had been on the line with this. Okay, so he reported that the UTIL group did an outstanding job in working with not only him, but the rest of the board and the town. I mean, I don't want to go through all the adverbs used and the adjectives used, but he was quite enthused, and he pointed to them as being successful. And what was really striking me is he pointed out that he empowered the town professionals and he empowered the town officials in making presentations. In other words, it wasn't the consultants who got up all the time in front of the town meeting or the Board of Selectmen or whatever. It was not the consultants, it was well-prepared citizenry and officials who were given the coaching necessary to do it. I mean, all this came from so it was a professional service, and obviously you have to understand your material to do it. So when I hit this the first two times or whatever, I took note of that and took it seriously for our situation. And it ran all the way through all the other references as well. As far as the supervision or strength of or how the interaction would go with the project manager, I found out that the style of Harriman's approach to tasking is just different than the way in which the Fort Point approach it. And that's because, very frankly, the level of experience and professionalism seems of a different type in the Fort Point group than it does in that group assembled by Harriman. And that is that the group from UTIL, for example, can operate quite independently with the minimum of, shall we say, oversight and supervision from a central control point, let's say, within Fort Point. Yet they're responsive to it. I did hear this. And this is because of the range of experiences that all of them had. And also, it turned out that there's a reason why these three groups are together. They've worked before like this successfully. And the other thing that struck me is, and I got this from the town professionals from Salem. I mean, he kept me on for at least 20 minutes discussing the adventures in Salem, all right? Where the interaction with the local property owners and business operators, two separate, owners and operators, two separate. He made it very, very clear how important, how well Util and the Donahue Group worked, pointing out I'll just summarize, the financial advantages of some of the infrastructure improvements and changes that were going to be made. So I just want to say, the sense I got when I did the reference checks, I was learning as much as about the process in other towns as I was learning about the consultants. I came away myself, after reviewing the situation, that I agree at a certain level, both groups are the same, we probably can't go wrong, but from getting it done and being able to work with, my sense is that that Util would be significantly more responsive. That's where I come out.
And that's the person you're gonna have to deal with for the most part.
Now,
So if you-
on the other hand, I'm not suggesting that if in the wisdom of this group.
But that isn't the person we're gonna be dealing with.
Right.
It's Util's boss.
Well, we'll deal with not just Util's boss, but no, that's not the way they work. The project manager will be the main point of focus. However, Tim Love, at least according to what my understanding is, the way they have it worked for the Util part of it, that Util would be the main point of contact for that kind of work. I guess I'm comfortable with that arrangement that they have in mind. And I'm after the kind of talent, as you are, Mark. I'm after the kind of talent that Port Point brought to the table.
I think they're gonna be easier for the townspeople and the people in the boards in town to deal with them. You're right, you're absolutely right. Harriman is a class above them as far as their presentation, how they do things and everything else. But maybe we have to take a little bit of a step back because we have to interact and we have to work with them. And I think I just got a better sense of listening to them, to the Fort Point group, than I did from the other one.
And just want to add, I attended the forum the other night for the sewering, and I have absolutely no doubt at all. I mean, it's very obvious that the consultant that we'll be bringing on board will be working with the sewering group. We'll have interactions with the consultant currently working with the sewering group, and I have no idea who else will be brought in. And when I look at the track record of Fort Point and what their background experience all the way through, they're used to working with complex, more moving parts than one or two. And that's what we're talking about for the common.
Yeah, I
So-
don't think Harriman
Well, yeah, that's true.
doesn't have that either.
Both of them.
What?
I don't think, I think they both would have that, though.
They both went?
Yeah, I don't think that's a negative against Harriman.
No, it's far from negative. I just feel that the combination of being able to work really well with diverse moving parts, plus the particular talent level that I see from the Fort Point group, I'm slightly more comfortable with them than I am with Harriman. It's as marginal as Mark is, let's put it that way.
Well, I'm very impressed, as I say, with some of the things that I see in the references you had here. I mean, this one for Salem, it was an 8-year effort, was going nowhere until these people came in and they stayed on a new budget, completed each phase in time, very easy to work with. I mean, this to me is a very, very strong point. And then the second thing is that they were able to deal with all these different people and were able to capture what they wanted and put it together in a way. So as I say, I could be happy with Harriman too. And in fact, as you know, because we dealt with this at the beginning, they were my number one when we first saw the things. But I think after seeing some of this, and seeing their presentation, I'm moving in the, I would support the Fort Point, excuse me. I would support the Fort Point proposal over the other one, though, I'd be happy with either.
I'd like to just clarify something I said earlier, if that's okay. So I mentioned Jonathan's word, enthusiasm, so I was looking through my notes and I found it. So I like the fact that Fort Point used the term placemaking, and that they understood the fact that in Littleton, we have 90% of our workers leaving town at the end of the day, and what could we do to keep them here for a few more hours? So the fact that they understand placemaking, and I'll just, looked it up, so capitalizes on local communities' assets, inspiration, and potential with the intention of creating public spaces that promote people's health, happiness, and well-being. I think for what we're trying to do, that characterizes it.
Does anyone not attach importance to just sloppy work in their presentation where they start right off by getting something factually wrong about Littleton and its historical references in the...
What was that?
Oh, it's when the Minutemen gathered
Oh.
at Littleton Commons. Well, no, they didn't. And, I mean, how much effort do you have to get to, you know, as much importance we attach to kind of knowing the town, and all we hear about, oh, they're going to know. Well, what happened in the process of putting their package together? They just get something so fundamentally wrong as that. And then you just look at the document itself. It looks like 3 different outfits threw a package together, and I didn't see that in either of the 2 others. I mean, the Fort Point group is an effort of the state to try to get into, you know, through the resources of the Donahue Institute at UMass Boston, to get into the private sector business of consulting. And their track record, I think it remains to be seen. I think they shine by the people they choose to be associated with, like UTIL. And, you know, when we had them in here in September, somebody from the Donahue Institute, I was not impressed. It was information that was 20 years old and not relevant to Littleton and its commercial challenges of today.
I think that meeting was a representative from, not from the Donahue Institute. It was not from Donahue.
It was not?
No, it was from a different one entirely.
Why?
It was from he's talking about Monica. Monica came from, I know who you're talking about. Her first name is
She's from a
Monica.
different group.
She's a different group entirely, had nothing to do with Donahue. That was from a totally different group, Paul. That was from the,
MAPC group?
no, come on.
It was one of the UMass campuses.
Yeah.
It was another UMass,
It was UMass
Columbia,
Boston.
UMass.
That's where the Donahue Institute is.
No,
No, Donahue is
Donahue is somewhere else.
Well,
Donahue, UMass Amherst.
Yeah, but this one was from inside Boston. This was
UMass
from
Boston, I think.
This was from the.
Collins Institute.
Thank you, Collins, yeah, totally different
all
group.
right, a distinction without a difference.
Oh, no, there's a
Yeah.
big difference.
No, there is not.
First of all, we're now going to, you have forgotten, her assignment was to introduce the committee to a group, okay, a history. She actually did what she was asked to do, which is provide some background for a new committee.
Well, I was present for it, you know.
Yeah, I know you were. I know you were.
So Michael,
Duly unimpressed as well.
so Michael, when you were doing references, because they said that Hingham Center and Norwalk, Connecticut were probably the best examples of their work. Harriman Group said that those were the 2 best examples. We asked that question in the interviews. So when you did references for Harriman, Anna.
Yeah, I mean,
Have you talked to Hingham or Norwalk?
I spoke with someone in Hingham, yes.
Okay. But that wasn't, because you just mentioned it was Amherst, Weymouth, and Tiverton.
So the one for Hingham specifically is FXM's work.
Okay.
Let's see if I can find that one in here. Yes, so if you have the proposal, it's this one here, the South Hingham Office Park. It's that one down there.
Okay, so the questions the FXM piece, they just did the economic analysis piece?
Yes, so FXM had 3 different ones. So FXM specifically had, if you go to question number two, so it's Pawtucket for economic development strategy, Hingham for their fiscal impact, and Union Point in Weymouth also for fiscal impact.
That's interesting. So these were separate So the references you had for Harriman were different projects than the references you had for FXM.
So some of them were an overlap. So, for example, the person who I spoke with for a reference for Harriman also was able to provide a reference for FXM, but they were for different projects that were listed in
Okay.
the proposal.
That's unfortunate, we couldn't get a reference that was for something that combined both entities. Okay.
Well, that particular reference was able to speak to the work that they both did.
But for two different projects?
Yeah, for two different projects, yeah. So again, let me see if I can pull it up real quick. One of the aspects of the relationship for Harriman, going back to when we did the original proposal review with Jonathan, Mike, and myself, was that with Harriman, we did not know if the three groups had worked together between Harriman, FXM, and Green, or to what extent they had worked together, versus the Fort Point folks. I believe they even referenced in their proposal that they had worked together and that they had connections among themselves.
Okay. Mary, do you have any opinion on any of this?
She doesn't vote.
I know that, but she's a professional in this environment, so I welcome her opinion.
Yeah. Thank you for asking. I would be quite comfortable with either. I think either could do a nice job for the town. I've been swayed by UTL and their approach to working with the businesses.
Okay.
Seems to be a point of differentiation between the teams.
Right, and we don't necessarily know if it's just something that is their approach, or if it's just something that Harriman wasn't asked to do. That seems like, you know what I mean? If it was the nature of the towns that they worked in, they were like, well, this is a community-based thing, so it's.
The reference from the Gaming Commission, there was a reference for the State Gaming Commission.
For Everett.
Okay, it was the Everett project.
Yep.
Okay, so to be clear, the narrow focus of that was, the focus was to do an economic impact of having a casino in Everett. Not, the specifics are not relevant to us, but it's a very complex, difficult to carry out. That's a son of a gun task to carry out in a town like Everett, any town in Massachusetts with the history. So what I came away from with respect to the group from Donahue is their ability to handle a complex problem and actually have it implemented. On the basis of their recommendation, it took the Gaming Commission in a particular direction in the negotiation with Wynn, or whoever they're now called, okay? So, I mean, what was interesting in this to me was that there was a history of this group that Fort Point put together of dealing from everything from the tunnel work in Boston to Weston, okay? A full range of projects with different degrees of complexity, of implementation, of getting something done in front of the town meeting, in front of the mayor, in front of whoever, and getting it done, that I saw consistently throughout the reference checks. On the Harriman group, I have to say, I didn't necessarily not see it, it's just that there was a difference, a slight difference in weight, and that was about it.
And if you're talking about the gambling thing,
Yeah.
that's huge, that's monumental, it's never been done.
Exactly.
And compared to that, what we're asking them to do in Littleton, should be, I shouldn't say easier, but it's not going to have as many moving parts as that gambling commission board had to have.
The moving parts are different, and, you know, we could have.
The point is that they pulled it off and they did a great job with
They
it.
did, yeah, and the fellow who runs the development part of that was very clear they've got some other stuff in the hopper that they want to use the Donahue just for that reason. So, I mean, all I can do is report to you.
Do we want to decide this?
I think we have to decide. I'd like to get moving on it for no other reason than I'd like to be on sync with what the Board of Selectmen are looking at with
Yeah,
the
well,
sewer.
go ahead and do it, but let me ask, remind me, Michael, who was the point person that will be your principal contact from the Fort Point group? if
Her
that's
name, I
right?
believe, is Jill.
It wasn't Susan Straight?
Let's just see if I can get it here.
Julie Conroy.
Yeah, I did talk a number of times with her in order to get some information, shall we say, straightened out for some of the references. So,
Which one?
huh?
Julie Conroy was the
Yeah.
project manager for Fort Hill.
Yeah, Julie.
Point. It's on Fort Hill.
Yeah, but the
Can't find her bio.
she is on page,
Oh, at the website?
Yeah.
she's on page 13.
Well, she doesn't even appear at their, on their website.
Fort Point Associates here. Here, you want to pass this down.
May I have my document back?
Yep. She's at the bottom right. The reason I got contact with her is I wanted to clarify why the president of Fort Point didn't make it to the presentation. It turned out he was at two mandated public hearings that evening in two different towns that were preset before we scheduled up. So unless there's something here that we need to bring out, because it's, I mean, I'm, as it were, trying to, as it were, make sure that we are effective as well as on time with everything else that's going on. So I'm ready to entertain a motion for making a, shall we say, initial offer.
All right, go ahead.
Excuse me, Paul, you were saying you were looking on the website and you couldn't find Julie?
I was at the Donahue,
She works at Fort Hill.
right.
Okay, got it, sorry.
Yeah.
I
What
didn't see.
point? No, I keep saying I have another contractor I work with at Fort Hill, so that's why I keep saying.
That's okay. All right, I'm going to entertain a motion for selecting Fort Point Associates.
I'll make the motion that we consider Fort Point Associates for the revitalization of the common area as our consultant.
That's the motion. Do I hear a second?
Should it be something like that we enter into negotiations with them
Yes.
for a,
We could include that phrase in it because it is going to be more than likely a negotiation. And as customary, also just for complete, it is conceivable that something may occur that will require us to basically continue the process of looking. So we should not put any of our stuff away and call it until later.
And at that point, do we then go back and revisit, or do we say now that
If the negotiation is successfully completed, that will enter into it, the town, we're recommending to the town that they enter into a contract. Is that fair to say, Paul? Is that the proper formulation? That we're recommending, the board would recommend, that our committee would recommend entering into a contract with
Sure, that works.
Fort Point Associates, Inc.
For form, that sounds fine. you know.
Okay.
But before we entertain that motion, should there actually be a vote?
Yes,
That's what we're doing right now.
Well, I heard that they basically I heard we're proposing to accept it, and so I guess you're saying aye or nay, okay.
We haven't got that far yet.
Okay.
I mean, got a second, do we? Or did
Right, we haven't
Is
got a
that
second
John-
yet.
Jonathan, was that a second? Since we had discussion, I suppose that was a second for discussion purposes, right?
yeah, maybe that's what it was. Yeah, I mean, we should probably word, what would be the best way to word such a motion? I mean, the proposal would be that we enter into,
No, that we recommend to.
recommend to the town.
That is correct. Recommend to the
Mark,
town.
you want to?
I'll make a motion that we explore the possibilities of entering into a potential contractual arrangement with the Fort Point Group for the revitalization of the common. How's that?
Okay, by me, maybe a little bit too many,
Yeah, there's a lot in there. Yeah.
sort of
I took a page out of
pulling
Gary's
back or
book.
something.
Gary may be able to help edit it down to be.
It's Mark's motion.
We have to start with one. Let's start with that one. How's that?
Okay, so, Maren, have you already edited it? All right, now what does it sound like?
I think your preferred consultant is Fort Point Associates.
That is correct.
You would like to move forward with contract negotiations
That's right.
and authorize the chairman to sign a contract with them
That's right.
if they're the most advantageous
Yes.
after contract negotiations. And then kind of the open-ended part of that is, do you want to designate Harriman Group as the backup should
Yes,
contract?
yeah, that was,
That's where I was
I
going.
wanted to add that as a second.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we would all agree that we would not feel unhappy about having them, and if,
Right, yeah.
if it doesn't work with the.
Yeah,
Right, okay.
yeah, what I want the motion to reflect, or maybe we should even, motion reflect that in the event that it becomes necessary, that the chair can then make forward such a recommendation to Harriman.
Right.
So there's no guarantee that the first one will work out.
Can I just ask a question on process? 'Cause I was looking at the proposal, and the proposal has criteria, has A through G under pages 7 through 11. And I don't, we have never actually, when you guys did a screening and you got down to that, I assume you used that criteria to help get down to the screening of the
We
three.
had 4 questions, right, and then we rated against those.
Well, there was, well,
There were a bunch
no,
of,
there were 7 criteria.
Yeah.
Right.
Staffing plan, references, desirability of approach, familiarity with
that's-
Littleton.
Those are the questions they use to bring the 3 forward.
The 3 forward. So that's just to get to the 3, or is that supposed to be the same criteria we use for the actual selection?
That was to get to the 3 that you interviewed, and now
Okay.
you have the additional information in the interviews and the references.
So are we supposed to be using that criteria to basically make the selection?
No, that was one piece of it.
Okay.
That's where you got the 3, and now with the interviews and the references, you have the full amount of information you can consider.
Okay. Because I still stand by, if I looked at how I rated, I do this often at work. And, I gave certain scoring for each of these 7 things, which were the basis for the selection.
But, Gary, we're past that.
Right.
We really are, we're past that.
Okay.
Sometimes I'm trying to squelch your concerns, we're past that. We're at the point now where we're trying to advance to the step beyond the final 2. So how do we have the wording so far with all the the further stipulation?
Okay, so I think Mark's motion was to designate Fort Point Group as the preferred consultant, authorize the chairman to enter into contract negotiations with them for the Littleton Common revitalization work. And if negotiations are not successful with them, to move to the Harriman Group for contract negotiations.
That sounds pretty complete.
Fine with me.
All right, that's the motion. Now official, now we can have the second.
second,
Any further discussion? All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Abstain.
Okay. The motion carries. So we already have the next steps. To bring you up to date, I'll be meeting with Anthony Ansaldi on Tuesday with Maren, and we're going to be going over the approach to negotiations, and I will keep us all abreast of what's happening. I would like, however, to remind us that we should begin the process of moving to the next set of shall we say, tasks force or priorities. We've just gotten started. So by next meeting, I'm hoping we can open up the discussion, at least however tentatively, on where we're going to hit next. Okay, minutes.
Yes, you had minutes, I'm sorry, for the Master Plan Implementation Committee meetings of February 27th and 28th, and the screening subcommittee from February 6th and February 8th.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's okay. So we're not going to actually discuss next steps right now?
Well, the next step is, the only next step we can carry out at the moment is the negotiation. What did you have in mind?
Just in terms of how long, that process might take, and then what happens after that? Is it all incumbent on that negotiation process?
Yeah.
Well, we have the general schedule from the consultant, so if there are any changes to that in the negotiations.
Yeah, it's the start date has already shifted, as it were, from what the original work plan had in mind. That is the start date that was formulated by the committee, is, I think, been pushed a little bit.
Okay.
I think, okay.
So just to be clear, so on page 11 of Fort Point,
Yeah.
it lists their proposed work plan, which project kickoff was to be in March of 2018.
Mhm.
So do we have an anticipated date? Would that be maybe June? I mean, I just want to get a sense of how long negotiations typically take.
I would be surprised if they take longer than a week, if that much. I think it depends on the availability of who can come into Littleton and sit at a table and within 2 or 3 hours, maybe 2 days,
Okay.
depending on how they go. If I remember correctly, the discussion with the steering committee thing was 3 or 4 days, wasn't it? Over, stretched out.
Yeah.
There was,
So it can be fairly swift.
Why don't we see if we can have them in our April meeting? Wouldn't that
that's where what I'm trying to go for.
And so there's no, at this point, we've gotten the funding already, so there's no requirement to go before town meeting before they can start, right?
That's
If
correct.
the numbers are within what was authorized.
No, but it is what the planning board and the selectmen that can authorize the funding, or is it the planning board? It's not us in any event, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does.
This is the blended funding.
Yes.
Some of it was planning board and some of it is.
It's the grant that came directly to
Right.
us.
So this committee's taken a vote, the planning board is also going to need to take a vote.
Right, so just procedural, I understand that, but just wanted to make sure that was understood.
So it would have to go to the next planning board.
It is April 5th
Yes.
April 5th to approve.
to them.
Yeah, if the contract negotiation is successful, then
Leave
you have
Anthony
something to
out.
approve.
Don't go leaving.
You can't leave. Most exciting part.
What is that, a Geiger counter? What are you doing out there?
That's my phone.
No, the other thing.
My lunchbox.
Yeah, that's your lunchbox?
I have to eat while I'm working. Am I on camera?
Is that an
Yes.
action figure
Yes.
lunchbox?
You just got on. You're going to have to come forward a little bit there.
They see me enough on TV.
Okay.
You need anything?
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh, well, how quick would,
Okay.
negotiation you have?
The committee has selected one of the 2 candidates to move forward with the negotiation. Do you have any sense of how long that negotiation might take? From experience.
We'll open the price, and hopefully the price falls within the budget, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
If it's over, hopefully it's not.
Right.
Okay.
So it could be real easy.
Okay. What's your experience with in terms of time? How long, let's say worst case, there's a
If it falls within our budget, we open it up and everything looks good, it's, okay, you've been selected, send them out a contract, and you're good to go.
All right.
You know, and normally, folks that are bidding on bids, they know what the budget is going into it. So, they find out what they have to work with for dollars, and so I'm confident we'll probably fall within the budget. So, we'll know on, what, Monday, we're meeting Monday?
You and I are meeting Tuesday.
Tuesday, and I told Maren too, if she can join us.
Okay. So when do you open? The
Tuesday.
Tuesday?
We'll do it
Okay.
Tuesday.
Okay, fair enough. Good.
Let me know who we're opening, and we'll go from there.
Okay,
All right?
works.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. You guys have a good night.
Thanks. We're just about done. Thank you.
All right. Take care.
We were doing minutes, correct? We're looking to approve minutes of the meeting of February 27th, 28th, and the screening subcommittee of February 6th and February 8th of 2018. Are there any corrections, additions to any of those documents?
Motion to accept the minutes as you indicated.
There is a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Now we come to the real tough part, which is...
Adjournment?
Oh, I did have
Yes,
one item to bring up if I could.
please.
So I've been trying to get on the agenda with the selectmen for the proposal for the Transportation Advisory Council. I
Mhm.
spoke with the chairman, Chuck DeCoste, explained a little bit of background as to how we got here. So he's there, I know the selectmen are very busy right now with warrant and those kind of things, but I was proposing that April 9th, I think, is the...
We closed the warrant Monday night, so we should be free for that sort of stuff.
So I was proposing that, and so he was gonna, see what getting on the schedule, I don't know if that's been discussed at all.
Hasn't yet, but it might come up Monday night, what the prospective schedules for upcoming meetings are.
So-
I'll make sure I bird dog that.
Yeah, that'd be appreciated, because I'd like to see the different bodies that I've spoken to, like the highway department and the planning board and stuff like that. I would like to see if they could also attend that meeting in case there were questions from the selectmen as to how do you think about this, council, and do you have any comments or concerns? I think that would only help address any concerns that they have about whether this is needed or necessary. So, just want to give an update on that. I also met with the new head of Elder Human Services on Tuesday, Liz Tretiak. Very, very good discussion, and I'll share some of the information at a future meeting as to what came out of that.
And she's aware that she's operating the most successful transportation system other than the railroad here in town, right?
Well, that was something that was insightful for me, is that most of their time is spent arranging the transportation as opposed to doing actual social work. They spend most of their time managing the shuttles,
Details, yeah.
which is interesting, I'll say that.
Well, at some point, I remember people, I mean, this was years and years ago when my son was going to school, and somebody said about how the schools mostly were run on the basis of what the buses, of the availability of the buses and the bus schedules. So,
They are challenged in that organization. That was insightful for me to learn that.
Next meeting, we gotta schedule our next meeting.
Yes,
Important we
we
do
do.
that. Yes. What would be, if we are successful in the next 2 weeks, that brings us to the end of March, beginning of April. So I'd like to have a meeting scheduled at least as soon after the negotiations are complete. What looks like the date?
Well, we're meeting the 5th, right?
Yeah, we're meeting the 5th.
That's the planning board's meeting on the 5th, that's a
Fifth.
Tuesday, right?
Thursday.
Thursday, okay.
The week after that, Monday, the 9th through the 13th.
It's opening day for the
So
soccer.
will we be meeting before or
What, the
after
5th?
planning board?
We're trying to, we more or less have to meet after you guys do, because You have to approve.
Right, so you're gonna have to come before us first. and
correct.
then-
They can happen,
Oh,
and it doesn't matter. I mean, it'd be subject to their funding, that sort of thing. You can make the agreement subject to their,
Right.
okay, so.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we're not
You're not
being
gonna step on
impolite to you.
anybody's
you know,
toes, no.
you know.
It's not gonna be a
I
problem.
just don't want to.
You're still probably gonna meet afterwards, but you can sign everything, get everything all done before you even meet with us.
Okay, fair enough.
I don't think
Yeah,
we
you
probably
don't
should
need-
have,
You don't need a meeting to sign it.
No, you
No,
don't.
no, no, I want to have a meeting of our group because I will have had, if the negotiations are successful, I will already be in contact with the consultant.
Yeah, next time we meet, they ought to be on board and we're
Yeah.
launching, right?
we should
Yeah,
be seeing
And with
their,
a schedule and a startup date and what they want
Right.
to do first, second,
Well,
and
the
also.
So the first week of April or the second week, are you thinking?
Yeah, those are the two, that's what I'm trying to get us down. So you're the 5th,
We're the fifth.
but we're the
I
5th.
think it would be better to do it after the planning meetings, just so that they're coming here and they're putting effort into updating their work plan and coming up with their game plan, just to be all, like, copacetic, that it's all set.
Would you like to leave it open to their schedule?
I have no problem with that, I just want to make sure we have a place for us. So why don't we go to the, tentatively go to the, let's see. the-
12th?
The 12th, thank you.
Okay.
Following
What kind of
Thursday.
day is that?
Are we gonna start trying to do Thursdays? Is that what we're gonna try to do?
Well, I mean, we could move back to Tuesday again,
I
right?
would rather go back to Tuesday. I have something that takes place between 6 and 7 on Thursdays, so.
Why couldn't we stay at Tuesdays? Wasn't it because Mike?
Because Mike Fontanella ironically had basketball obligations, so we can move back to Tuesday.
But that must be coming to an end, right?
Yeah, it should be, it's an end.
It should be over by now for basketball, yes.
Okay, I don't care about Tuesday's fine with me.
Okay.
Yes. Will that be the 10th?
That looks like the,
10th.
that's the 10th? Okay. So our next meeting will be hopefully at a salubrious location, right? On the 10th.
Cool.
Okay. Is there any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.